Good evening, everyone. I see the time is 5:30. It is Tuesday, April 7th, and I'll call this regular council meeting of the Harrison Hot Springs Village Council to order. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that our meeting tonight takes place on the traditional territory of Stahelis. There's no public hearing tonight. Are there any late items to introduce this evening? CAO Cook.
Thank you very much, Mayor Tallon. I do have an additional notice of motion that will be added under notice of motion. Section 18C was left by Councillor Schweinbenz before his departure, and it's the notice of motion is labeled public art policy. Thank you.
Thank you, CAO Cook. We'll move to amend that on the notice of motion section. Moved by Councillor Faccio, seconded by Councillor Jackson. Discussion. We'll call the vote. All in favor? And our agenda will include that additional notice of motion. Are there any other late items to introduce this evening? Seeing none, I'll seek a motion to approve the agenda as amended. Moved by Councillor Vital, seconded by Councillor Jackson. Discussion. I'll call the vote. All in favor? And our agenda is approved. Are there any conflicts of interest to declare concerning our agenda this evening? Councillor Vital.
Thank you, Mayor Tallon. I will be recusing myself from item E under correspondence from Marlene Reimer, the Terry Fox Organizing Committee. I have a personal connection to the organizing committee members, having sat on the committee and chaired for many years. So I will recuse myself once that discussion and vote takes place. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vital. Noted. Any other declarations of conflict of interest this evening? I don't see any. We'll move to item 7 on the agenda, which is adoption of council minutes. Could I have a motion to adopt the minutes under A, B, and C? Moved by Councillor Jackson, seconded by Councillor Faccio. Discussion on that motion. Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor, and those minutes are adopted. Item 8 on our agenda. Is there any business arising from the minutes this evening? I don't see anyone raising any business. There are no delegations or petitions tonight, which takes us to item 10, which is correspondence. I noted your declaration of conflict. I'm going to seek a motion to receive the correspondence under A to E. And once received, I'm going to suggest that we begin with any discussion on item E to allow Councillor Vital to recuse herself, and then proceed after that discussion with the balance of correspondence A to D. With that note, I have a motion to receive this correspondence this evening. Moved by Councillor Vital, seconded by Councillor Jackson. Discussion on the motion to receive the correspondence. Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor, and the correspondence is received, and we will let Councillor Vital recuse herself. All right. Looking at item E of correspondence, is there any discussion on that item this evening? Councillor Faccio.
Your Worship, I'd like to make a motion that the fees are waived for the event, the Terry Fox 2026.
Moved by Councillor Faccio, seconded by Councillor Jackson. Any discussion on that tonight, gentlemen? I think we've done this in the past, and I think it's a good thing to do. Seeing no discussion, I'll call the vote on that. All in favor? and we are in agreement, and that motion passes. Is there any other correspondence or any other issues arising out of item E in our correspondence this evening?
We're still discussing it.
Is there any other comments or discussion on item E in our agenda this evening? I don't see any. CAO Cook, could you arrange to have Councillor Vital brought back in? Welcome back, Councillor Vital. We are now looking any discussion on correspondence items under 10A to D. Councillor Pacho.
Thank you, Your Worship. The first one I have here is regarding the letter from the Bramble Bank Cottages regarding the closure of the public pool. Thank them very much for their correspondence. But I believe, as most of us know in council and probably some of the public, that the pool has been going under extensive renovations, and I think it might be appropriate for these folks to contact the hotel themselves or speak with the Tourism Harrison if they want to make arrangements for their guests to use the pools when they're open, or the hotel pools that are being used by the residents of Harrison temporarily while the public pool is closed. So I'll leave that at that. I don't think there's any motion. I'm not making any motion for that, just as a reference. And page 15C, letter from the Tanya Hart, Doug Hart, and John Doofus and Jody Doofus, concept plan for elementary school. I would suggest that they stay tuned to our postings on Facebook. I believe there is a civic engagement at the school coming up in May. Not sure of the date, but I think that would be an appropriate time for them to come up with any observations or any comments that they may have regarding the use of the school and Fire Hall Park. So again, I don't think there's any motion required for that. And the last one is, I know all of council has already been apprised of this, but again, I'm going to give a big shout out to our CFO, Scott Schultz, and his team in the office for the Finance Officers Association CAN4 Award for the 2024 financial plan. It's always good to know that the village finances are in good hands, and they're in very good hands. And I applaud him and his staff for the great job they've done for our community. Thank you, sir. Through you, Your Worship. And that's it for me, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pacho. Councillor Vital.
Thank you, Mayor Talon. Item A, the letter from Bramblebank Cottages, and just into addition to Councillor Fascio's comments, I don't know if Bramblebank Cottages is part of the Chamber of Commerce, but that may also be, another outlet for them to raise the awareness. Item C, letter from Tanya Hart, Doug Hart, John Doofus, and Judy Doofus. I said, I think I just want to caution our residents a little bit here, not to jump the gun. There still is many processes and hurdles to to overcome. And one of the big things is provincial funding for the construction of the new school. And I also wanted to emphasize that throughout this process that there will be considerable public engagement on the issue. And that's it, Mayor Tallon. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vital. Councillor Jackson, any discussion on the correspondence? I'll have a couple comments as well. From the Bramblebank cottages, I very much appreciate the thoughtful letter and correspondence highlighting, I don't know, if I think expectations from visitors about access to the hot springs. And I certainly can appreciate the frustration when the public pool isn't open. I would like to see Harrison Hot Springs be much more prominent with the public experience with the hot springs. And I know the resort does a great job with their pools. Don't want to challenge that, but I would like to think that there could be other opportunities to explore. And while pools need maintenance from time to time, I can certainly appreciate the frustration from the guests at the Bramblebanks cottages as outlined in the letter. To the new elementary school, the potential for a new elementary school, again, I appreciate the thoughtful correspondence from those people that live on Balsam. Again, I would echo Councillor Fascio's suggestions to stay involved, and it's early days, as Councillor Vital has suggested on this, but getting feedback early helps inform decision makers, and lots of discussions with the school board on this, and maintaining green space, as they suggest, is an interest in the village, is one I share as well. So again, I'd like to thank him for that thoughtful letter and the comments in there. Again, to Mr. Schultz and the whole team, I'm very happy to know that our financial reporting meets all the criteria for this award, and that our materials are presented clearly and comprehensively for anyone to review. So very happy about that reward. The last piece of correspondence hasn't been spoken to this evening, is from the town of View Royal concerning, I guess it looks more like a request for funding or participating in a judicial review on certain matters coming out from the province concerning housing. Yeah, I'm not in favor of the village using its limited resources for legal costs for this. I think the judicial review will proceed under its own pace and of its own volition through the court process. I'd be interested in the results, of course, but I don't think at this time it's something that the village should invest its limited resources in. And I think that summarizes the correspondence for this evening. And that would take us to item 12 on the agenda, which is reports from councillors. Who would like to start us off this evening? Councillor Vital.
Thank you, Mayor Tallon. March 19th, I attended Agassiz Harrison Healthy Communities meeting and a couple of updates. Earthwise in Agassiz, and they also have another organic farm in Delta, is exploring the concept of an Eastern Fraser Valley food network. The Diversity and Inclusion Committee is planning a youth week in May with a job fair, and will be sponsoring a youth night at the rec center. Youth soccer is starting up soon, and the word is that they are in need of coaches. Earthwise has also received a grant through the Ministry of Agriculture and will be hosting educational sessions on exactly where our food comes from. And it will be directed to elementary and senior high school students. I'm pleased to announce that there is a new physician at the Agassiz Health Clinic. The next Agassiz Harrison Health and Communities meeting is scheduled for April 16th. This is going to be an in-person meeting, and it's going to be hosted by the village here at Memorial Hall. And I believe we're looking at also providing a small lunch for the committee. March 31st, I attended a Lower Mainland Local Government Association sessions planning meeting, and I'm pleased to say that our program has been finalized, and we are ready to go at the end of the month. And April 1st, I attended the Let's Mott Community to Community Forum, which was hosted by the District of Kent. Thank you, Mayor Tallon.
Thank you, Councillor Vital. Councillor Pacho.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a little into my reports here, a little thank you to our staff. I was contacted by a resident regarding the community garden requesting electrical power there, and within a few days our staff had contacted that resident, and the power is, I believe, was already put in place. So a big thank you to the our village CAO and staff for moving so quickly on the request from the Community Garden Committee people. Thank you. At the FVRD meeting last week, we had a delegation from BC Nature Land and Water Group regarding Municipal Protected Areas Program to mandate to register existing land in the FVRD, working with staff to establish all parks, including Harrison East sector, for a long-term protection perpetuity. Only 20% of conservation data in BC at present. They hope to increase this by 2030 to 30%. This will be a good way for all the parks in the regional district to be looked at by this BC Nature Group. And if Councillor, when I see Councillor Schweinbenz, I would suggest that maybe they should come and do a presentation to the Environmental Committee. I think that would be of interest to them as well. Of course, as councillors heard, and probably many others, there's been major cutbacks in the funding for the Agricultural Land Commission. So the board is very concerned about this, of the amount of cutbacks in funding, and reducing the size of the committee. So letters are going out to the Premier and our local MLA with the board's concerns. BC Transit 2026 budget and service plan, tremendous lot of discussion and concerns over Route 7 due to the budget cuts from Mission, from Agassiz to Mission. Area directors and myself and Kent suggested that there be a meeting at UBCM with the Minister, and also a letter should be going to the Premier as well with our concerns, cutting back that very important route. As some of the EA directors had pointed out, in their area more people are moving in because of the less cost of housing, but there's no transportation for them. So this is a major route that was discussed many years ago as the as the route for recreation to get people from Vancouver to Hope on number 7. It was identified as a major tourism route, so that was discussions on that. The amendment went forward with the adoption to change the meeting time. I believe this is happening, the first meeting in November, this is the board meeting. Instead of starting at 6 p.m., we'll be starting at 1:30 p.m. in the afternoon. Safety concerns were brought up from regarding many of the electoral areas, directors. I mean, we have some that go to Boston Bar, Sunshine Valley, and the other electoral areas. And also staff and their working hours are increased tremendously with these late meetings as well. And now with the Zoom and the videos, people are able now to be informed with these meetings as well, if they so wish. At the Tourism Harrison Municipal and Regional District tax renewal, it was passed. We had a letter for them regarding the funding that they're going for. That the Fraser Valley Regional District provides support for Tourism Harrison's application renewal of their 2027 to 2031 municipal and regional district tax. And Fraser Health, there was a somewhat discussion from the directors regarding all the new additions that Fraser Health is hoping to put in place. The contribution from the regional board, which is also paid by all us taxpayers in our allocations every year. They're allocating $8 million for the Abbotsford, Chilliwack, and Mission hospitals for different parts of equipment. But this has been on hold till there's more discussion regarding how this funding is going to be placed. And the last one is, I think I've done this. Yeah, that's it. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Pacho. Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Your Worship. On March the 25th, we had our Communities in Bloom meeting. I'm pleased to see that we earned $200 from the sale of the seeds, which is pretty good for the first year, and hopefully it'll double next year where more people learn about this event. We have a lot of things planned for the year, but that'll all be coming out after our next meeting. I also attended the March the 31st in-camera meeting, and that's my report, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Item 13 on the agenda is the mayor's report. Short one from me this week. I also attended the Let's Moss Community to Community meeting on April 1st, and it was a good chance to share with and understand, share what's going on in the village, but also hear what's happening in District of Kent and other communities that participate in that forum, and just stay current on that. I also attended Resort Community Collaborative Mayor's meeting on April 2nd. Lots of talk about how to strategize to approach the province to allow more flexibility for resort municipalities on how they can use resort municipal infrastructure funding. Lots of communities are in different circumstances with the MRDT funding and other things, but certainly I spoke that in the village of Harrison, the resort municipal infrastructure funding has been put to good use and made a real positive change, positive difference for the tourism sector. And that is my report for this evening. Item 14 on the agenda is reports and minutes from committees and commissions, and there's two here. Could I have a motion to receive these adopted minutes for information?
So moved, Your Worship.
Moved by Councillor Pacho, seconded by Councillor Vital. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor? And that carries. Item 15 on our agenda is reports from staff. And I'll turn it over to the CAO Cook.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I won't go through the whole report, but there is one section under discussion that I'd like to read verbatim if I could. This report provides and summarizes operational activities, key deliverables, and ongoing initiatives across village departments. It is intended to give council a consolidated overview of work completed and in progress during the reporting period. Excuse me. Highlighted areas of significant activity and support transparency and accountability in municipal operations. The accomplishments outlined in this report reflect the continued excellent work of the staff team that I have to my right. There are a few that are away. One's on vacation, one's at a conference, and I'm sure they're both watching intently. But I do want to make a point of thanking their continued hard work and effort, making this not only a great place to work, but a great place to accomplish things as a team. But we couldn't do it without the council's direction and continued and ongoing support. Thank you very much for allowing me to state that. The recommendation that is in front of council is that the Chief Administrative Officer's report dated April 7th, 2026 regarding the 2026 first quarter update be received for information. Thank you.
Moved by Councillor
Second.
Vital and seconded by Councillor Facho. Discussion. All in favor? And that carries. I probably should have said this right before I called the vote, but I would like to say thank you, CAO Cook, for laying out the report. I find it really informative to know all the things that happen that don't come to a council table or don't come to a council meeting, but that staff are taking the direction from council very seriously and acting on that in so many detailed ways on a day-to-day, week-to-week, and month-to-month basis. Much appreciated. I'll move on to the next report or bylaws, number 16 bylaws, and we have an A. I'll read it out. A bylaw notice enforcement amendment, bylaw number 1242-2026, and there's a recommendation that the bylaw notice enforcement amendment, bylaw number 1242-2026 be adopted. Moved by Councillor Jackson, seconded by Councillor Vital. Any discussion on that motion? Councillor Vital.
Thank you, Mayor Tallon. Just pass for you to our CAO. I just wanted to confirm that item number 2 is the only amendment required to adopt this bylaw. I believe we've had quite extensive discussions on it, so I just wanted that clarity. Thank you.
CAO Cook.
That is correct. Thank you.
Any other discussion on this bylaw? We've seen it several times. I don't think any more discussion. Thank you for the clarification, CAO. If there's no further discussion, I'll call the vote. All in favor of this? And that bylaw is adopted. The next item is B, and a report from our planning consultant. Over to you, Mr. Cossey, is that correct?
Yes, Your Worship. We're waiting for the PowerPoint, and there it be. Before we get started on that, though, just quickly, the amenity cost charges are designed to cover a portion of the capital costs associated with the need for additional local services arising from the approval of various development applications. So you can see right away that there's a tie-in with the growth potential of the community and what new services that we have to be looking at from an amenity cost issue. The ACCs are a development financing tool that was established under the Local Government Act that allows local governments to collect various charges to help fund growth-related amenity capital costs. As we're all aware, you used to have the community amenity cost charges concept, but that was outlawed recently by the provincial legislation, and in its place they put the ACCs. And this is what we're working on. So the ACCs are intended to support community amenities such as daycares, community spaces, and other facilities needed to serve growth over time. Now, we started off this process with that workshop that we held on December the 8th, where we asked council to submit various ideas that they would like to see that could be possibly funded through the ACC process. And these are identified on pages 52 and 53 of the report. And that included safety and emergency services and various themes, parks, recreation and trails and various themes, community facilities and public spaces with various themes, housing with the rental building, health and social well-being with a couple of themes there as well, environment and urban forest with the tree canopy, infrastructure and utilities, hot spring source improvement, and land and property to purchase land. So we've got all of these lovely ideas. So now how do we make it fit into this process? Well, the first thing we did is we have to do a development or a preliminary screening framework, which provided us with a high-level assessment of potential ACC projects. Excuse me, that were, as I mentioned earlier, identified through council's earlier discussion. The assessment is based upon the following factors of what is the likely eligibility? Is it conditional? Is it high? Or is it low? Remember when I was saying earlier that it had to be related to potential growth issues? So we got to tie it in with that. And these are identified in pages 65 and 66 of the agenda package, what the summary was for this process of conditional, low, or high. The other thing that we've already talked about is its relationship to growth. Is this a clear relationship to development, or is it just on some sort of wish list, or can this be funded through some other mechanism like the DCCs, or just simple through the budgeting process? And then we looked at some of the key implementation considerations, as I just mentioned, talking about how it can be funded. Is it funded through the DCCs? Can it be funded through grants? All of those sorts of issues have to be taken into considerations. So what we've got now is basically we're just talking about the introduction and context of what we went through, our project evaluation in the capital program, and the implementation in the next steps of what we're going to be discussing now. So what are the amenity cost charges? We talked about that earlier. They're just fees collected from new developments to fund community amenities. They support community growth. They are not development cost charges, but they're very similar. I thought maybe it was something I said. ACCs work on the community amenity issues. DCCs work on infrastructure like your roads and your bridges and your other utilities. And the legislative foundation is found in the Local Government Act. So as I mentioned earlier, we started off this process by having council priorities and input, and this was done on December the 8th, and this is what we were looking at. All of these suggestions that we mentioned earlier are identified up here as well. So then we started to whittle it down a little bit further. We started looking at which projects are acceptable, which ones are not. We started looking at the screening of everything. As we mentioned earlier, we looked at the relationship to growth. We looked at the selection of the candidate amenities. Is there a high confidence level, a low confidence level? And then we focused on the long-term community needs as well. So basically, we're choosing amenities that can address future service demands within the village. So what we came up with is we looked at the daycare facility where we found that yes, it definitely addresses the growth issue. The community center hub supports community, and that is something that's very important. We're also looking at the healthcare capital contributions. This is similar to what they have in Metchosin, where because of the growth of the community, they need a healthcare facility. So this is where we thought we could get the amenities or the tools necessary to set up a healthcare system in place for if and whenever you can get a clinic up and operational. So here's what we looked at when we were dealing with some of the growth projections in the costing. So when we were looking at this, and we had to come up with some sort of matrices as well. Like when we're looking at this new program, you can base it upon number of employees that are going to be coming in because of a new business, or you can look at it on just the growth of the whole system. So when we started looking at everything, we started assigning values and everything else to it, and this included setting, you can see the last three, the amenity cost capital, where we started putting some projections of costs in there. These costs were not just created or brought up because we decided, oh, this sounds like a nice number. We actually looked at it and came up with an estimate of these costs to drive the whole model when we're dealing with your ACC requirements. So what are the next steps we can start looking at? Well, when we looked at it, we figured it was a 41.7% growth share based on population projections. We looked at the residential and commercial growth allocations, and then we looked at the draft ACC rates by development types. And what we've ended up with is we've got a residential cost per unit of $5,374.80. We've looked at the same for the other costs, and when we're looking at the commercial, we were looking at per meter of the gross floor area. So what do we do now to start implementing the ACCs in Harrison? Well, we have to start considering, is this going to be a jurisdictional wide structure, or do you want to just focus on a specific neighborhood? We're saying that we should have it across the entire village, as opposed to just having it in one street or two streets or three streets or one neighborhood versus another neighborhood. Look at the timing of the collection. You have a choice. You can either get it at the subdivision concept when the subdivision comes through, or at building permit stage. So we can continue on with that, depends on the circumstances. It's similar to what we do with the DCCs. We collect them at either the building permit stage or at the subdivision stage, so there's nothing there. And we have to consider things like the redevelopment exemption. There's no ACC if there's no increase in residents or workers. So if I come in and I'm building a house that has 15 people in it, and I do some redevelopment to it, and it still ends up with 15 people in it, I can't charge the ACCs. However, if I do my redevelopment and I come up with 20 new individuals, or 20 new units, then I can charge it for the 20 new units, or the 5 new units. You can't go back. If you've charged it once for 15 units, you can only charge it once. But if you add 5 more units into it, for example, then you can charge it for those additional 5 units. And then there's some other issues where you can start making it exempt, such as your statutory exemptions to any public worshiping space, affordable housing, supportive housing, co-op housing, transitional or emergency shelters. That's something that we have to dictate into the bylaw, but you have the ability to exempt certain things from your bylaw, your ACC requirements. So some of the other issues associated with the ACC bylaw is that you can do installment payments as well. For those of you that are familiar with development cost charges, you can also do your installment. If it's over $50,000 worth of DCCs, you can ask the village to do it in an installment process, which can be done as well through the ACC process. As with all the bylaws, anything that's in the application process right now, 1 year after the bylaw has been adopted, or prior to the bylaw being adopted, is ACC free, and anything basically in that process. So let's say, for example, you adopt your ACC bylaw on April 25th, 2026. If you got applications that are submitted on April 20th, 2026, they are still free from the bylaw for a year, which is a similar process that happens. And then your annual reporting and your reserve management, you're required to set up a reserve program and then have an annual report saying that this is what we've collected, how much we've collected, where we can put it into, something similar that we can add to the village's annual report already. So some of the key takeaways and our next steps, it's a growth, the suggestion that we have in front of us is growth driven. It's very transparent and accountable in the fact that we're going to be suggesting in a moment that we go to a community meeting to share this information with the public. And then the next steps after this is to create a formal ACC bylaw to be drafted and reviewed by the council. And then ongoing community engagement. Stakeholders will be invited to provide feedback before adoption, which will be done through the community meeting process. So this is what we have in front of you this evening, and excuse me, we've got, as I mentioned earlier, we have the single-family dwellings listed at $5,374.80 per dwelling unit. Medium density residential is $5,130.49 per dwelling unit. This would be like your townhouses. The high density residential, this is like your apartment buildings. It would be $4,641.87 per dwelling unit. And for any commercial activity, it would be $50.16 per every square meter of the gross floor area. So with that in mind, Your Worship, we're recommending that Council accept the attached ACC bylaw background report, and that staff be authorized to set up a community meeting to discuss the ACC program and information generated to date.
Moved by Councillor Faccio, seconded by Councillor Vital. Discussion. Councillor Vital.
Thank you, Mayor Tallon. Just a few questions. So through you to Mr. Cossey, thank you. Especially the PowerPoint presentation. It certainly made it easier. So was this analysis based on previous housing needs reports? And the next time a housing needs report is required, then will, it be adjusted? Will the program be adjusted?
That is correct, Your Worship. It's based upon the housing needs report. That was all factored in there as part of our process as we were sifting through all of the data.
Thank you. And I'm just wondering if the ACC program could unintentionally discharge certain types of development that the community and council may want to encourage, such as rental or something along that lines. Do you have any insight or any comment on that?
Yes, Your Worship. As I mentioned earlier, you can do some exemptions as to the type of housing that you want to see this not applied to, and that can be the same for any public worship centers, your mosques, temples, churches, whatever it is. You can look at those sorts of things as an exemption.
And can that be done on a case-by-case basis?
Depends how we word the bylaw. If that's what we would want to do, then we can word the bylaw that way, or we can just give a blank exemption across the board. But that's a decision council is going to have to make when the bylaw comes in front of you.
Thank you. And one of the questions or concern that crossed my mind, I'm just wondering if we can build in any safeguards, say to, and I'm thinking about future councils, would they have the ability to sort of like reallocate ACC funds that possibly deviate from the original intent of the fund? Am I making myself clear?
Yes, Your Worship, the councils down the road can change the bylaw as they see fit, but they have to make sure that they're meeting the legal requirements of the ACC program.
Okay, right. And does council have the ability to terminate the program at any time, or is this legislated?
Your Worship, yes, council can, you don't have to create an ACC bylaw if council does not want it.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Mayor Talon.
Thank you, Councillor Vital. I have many questions. I'm looking on page 70. It was in the slideshow as well. And there's just under $10 million in expenses there, total capital cost. I've never seen these numbers before. Where did these come from and how are these used? And $8.1 million for a civic center hub. We haven't even had a civic engagement. I'm kind of stunned at these numbers and where they came from and how they're being used.
As I mentioned earlier, this was just sitting down and getting cost estimates for this type of information. It's very high level. It's not nailed down specifically to a specific project, but what this was dealing with was the process that was started on December 8th, and out of that, all those things that the council gave us, these three issues came up as high on the to be considered, and so we just started to assign costs to that so that we can figure out what the ACC bylaw is or how much it's going to be set up for. If we find out that when we get into it that nobody wants the community hub when we go into the community meetings, then we can remove it from this and then rejig all of the figures. The daycare facility, that's again also, we were sitting down and just doing a very highball estimate, what it would be to set up a new facility and to set it up with their equipment that they utilize in there as well. The healthcare capital costs, that was taken from the Metchosin when they were looking at setting up their clinic. Their equipment was $125,000 that they were contributing towards the purchasing of, so that their healthcare practitioners could just move in and have the clinic ready to go from there. And that's what we based that figure on. So at this particular point in time, it's an educated guess because we don't have the particulars, we don't have any blueprints or anything else like that. But we still need to set it up so that we have some sort of target that we can move towards.
Okay, I'm really uncomfortable with these numbers just sort of landing here like this, like it's a cost estimate for these projects. I really think that's going to cause a lot of concerns and mislead a lot of people. I want to understand how these numbers, these capital cost numbers, inform or influence the 5,000 for the low density, basically per dwelling unit. If these numbers were half as much, what would happen to the amenity cost charges you're projecting for the low density residential?
This we don't know, Your Worship, because we'd have to go back and sit down in front. I don't know if it's going to be a clean because we've reduced everything, the capital costs up front by 50%. If that means it's going to be an automatic 50% reduction, the ACC requirements. We would just have, as I said, go back and re-examine all of those and go from there.
Okay, that leaves me with more questions and a very incomplete understanding about how this is put together. I'm really nervous and uncomfortable about these budget figures for these facilities. This is in advance of any kind of community input. Discussions are ongoing with the school board and their intention to have a community school, which I understand would include a daycare facility. And if it's not clear if these numbers are a quarter or a tenth of if that changes, I have a lot of questions about just how this is going to land in the village and what people are going to take away from this. CEO Cook.
Thank you very much for your worship. I think there's some confusion just on the the label of the Civic Center / hub. This number would reflect if, for example, back in 2018, the village was seeking funding to build a civic hub that would have been, say, for example, in behind the existing village office it was going to be built in the overflow parking lot. So this was a brand new building, nothing to do with the school or anything like that. This example is just taking something that we had back in 2018, adding inflationary costs in increase in construction and whatnot, and coming up with a number for a brand new building. We have a lot of irons in the fire. A classic example is the partnership we're trying to make with the school district and the lands there, and establish a civic hub. This is just to, in the event that we ever had to build something on its own. It's not meant to facilitate that project, the campus project. This is something totally separate. And these numbers are essentially to take what Mr. Cossey is trying to identify is that he's using real world examples to come up with these cost estimates. And then when you come over into the table at 3.5, that's the percentage that we can use or ask from the development community. So the numbers that you're trying to identify, the $5,000 per unit and the $4,000 and the $3,000, that will fluctuate. If we basically take a project and say, if it's an $8 million project, now we know we can ask the development community to fund basically $3.4 million of that. Then if we're looking at something significantly smaller, something reduced in scale, it will be a sliding scale to the ask from the development community. Hopefully that's added some clarity, not muddied the waters, but I just wanted to make sure there's a definition or a distinction between the civic campus project and a separate entity being a new campus or a new civic building.
Okay, I just it looks like budget estimates. It just says cost estimates. It's not, I understand you need some examples to drive this. And I know this is just our first report on this. Certainly give me a lot to think about. I'm going to need to understand a lot better these cost estimates, why these were chosen and how they came to be. I would really like to know the linkage and the relationship between these capital cost projects and the ultimate per unit or per dwelling ACC cost. And if that's not clear, I'm going to want to see some sort of sensitivity analysis that if these numbers double or half or whatever, how this impacts this. Anyway, it just makes me very uncomfortable having these budget estimates for some very large projects come up in this context without the full context of why these numbers are here and why these are pulled out.
ultimately, I think there's going to be a lot to think about on this, and to get this right is going to take a lot of work and a lot of consideration. I would also find it valuable for future reports to get a sense of what neighboring communities are doing for ACC projects and how whatever the village considers in the future, how it aligns or relates to what the District of Kent is doing, or other neighboring communities, Chilliwack, Mission example. Obviously, this is going to add to the cost of housing, and also something to think about. But it's also important, I understand the premise, that this is planning for growth and apportioning the costs that come with growth fairly across the village. So a difficult question, complicated. Councillor Pacho.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just two things. If I may suggest that due to the complexity and the questions that you're asking yourself and other councillors, that maybe we could have a committee of the whole with Mr. Cossey to explain this in more details, and our staff to prepare something with some of the comments that you brought forward. I'm only just, as for this evening, I am just basing this on the summary report, which is intended as background and discussion document to support further consideration. It's not a done deal, it's not written in stone. So it's like it says here, it's just a starting point, and it requires refinement of the program details. So that's what I'm going by. So I think a committee of the whole would be a good point for council and staff and Mr. Cossey to go over this more thoroughly. If I may put that forward as a motion, or would you like to speak? I'll leave it to for you to decide, Your Worship.
If I may, Your Worship?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Fascio. The wise counsel indeed. Mr. Cossey, a comment before I say something
I would
further.
just like to point out, we're not looking at 8.1 million for just the community hub. If you go over to the next page on 72, you'll see what the projected, the ACC recoverable cost is, and this is what we're moving it towards. And as well, there's, at this particular point in time, there's only two municipalities in the Fraser Valley Regional District that have the ACCs in place. That's Abbotsford and Mission. Nobody else has it at this particular point in time.
Thank you, Mr. Cossey, for that clarification. Councillor Fascio, I think that's a wise suggestion that if I understood your motion, to defer further discussion to a committee of the whole meeting with Mr. Cossey's presence, I would be more comfortable having a fuller discussion on this important report, so we all have the information in front of us that we need to consider. So motion, I will second that motion to defer. Is that in order, CEO Cook, to defer to a committee of the whole meeting?
Yes, we currently have the two motions sitting on the table, but if we're going to table it and defer to a future CAL, we can certainly do that.
That'd be my preference, that we defer this to a committee of the whole meeting with Mr. Cossey's attendance, and have that committee of the whole meeting before any community meeting to discuss this, because it would be good for, at least I think myself, I feel a little bit uncomfortable not understanding this as well as I should. Any other discussion on the motion to defer? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor? And the motion to defer passes. Thank you, Mr. Cossey, for that, and we look forward to seeing you at a future committee of the whole meeting. Takes us to 16C. And again, back to you, Mr. Cossey.
Thank you, Your Worship. The applicant at 469 Naismith is wishing to rezone their property from R1 to R2. The R2 zone is the only zone that allows for the use of a coach house. Coach houses are also sometimes referred to as laneway homes or carriage homes, are small self-contained dwelling units typically located on the same property as a principal resident. They are often built in the backyard or above a garage, offering a unique blend of privacy and proximity to the main home. Local governments across British Columbia have introduced or have in place zoning regulations to allow coach houses in residential neighborhoods. With the village's zoning bylaw, the R2 duplex zone allows for the placement of either an accessory residential suite or a coach house, but not both. In either situation, the additional units can serve as a rental accommodation, space for an extended family, or even downsizing options for homeowners. Coach houses contribute to the urban densification while maintaining the character of an established neighborhood. This site is located at 469 Naismith. It is currently serviced and has one single-family dwelling and a two-car garage. The site is located adjacent to a collector road that moves traffic in an east-west direction. And on the next page, 82, you can see the location of the dwelling or the applicant or the application. And the OCP designation currently has it as a low-density residential area. So to proceed, we do not need an OCP amendment or a redesignation. The things that we have to be concerned about as we move forward is this is also part of the riparian area protection development permit area, because the back part of the parcel is adjacent to the Miami and the greenhouse gas development permit area. However, we can still proceed with the review process, but we can hold off adopting the amendment bylaw until the required development permits have been considered by council. Or, if you wish, you can just give it the blessing tonight, and then we could worry about the development permits at the building permit stage. That's council's choice. As a general rule, rezoning bylaw is adopted after a public hearing. However, in this case, I draw your attention to the following, specifically paragraph 3 under the Local Government Act, section 464, paragraph 3, a local government must not, and that's underlined by myself, hold a public hearing on a proposed zoning bylaw if an official plan is in effect for the area, the bylaw is consistent with the official community plan, the sole purpose of the bylaw is to provide a development that is in whole or in part a residential development, and the residential component of the development accounts for at least half of the gross floor area of all buildings and other structures proposed as part of the development. As we cannot hold a public hearing, we must adhere to the following provincial requirements that are identified in section 467 of the Local Government Act. The required notice was published on March the 30th, 2026 on the village's website, the notice boards, and by direct mail out to all of the registered PO boxes in the village. The applicant has also had a sign erected on their property as required by the village's development procedures bylaw number 1214/2025. Council approved the placement of this required notice during their February 2nd, 2026 meeting. At that time, we had assigned a bylaw number 1237 to it, and then that was later inadvertently assigned to the financial plan bylaw. So we had to start again. And the notice of the public hearing is prohibited, must be given prior to first reading of the zoning amendment bylaw. Therefore, a new bylaw number was assigned. And the recommendations that we have in front of you, Your Worship, are that zoning amendment bylaw number 1243/2026 be introduced and be given first reading, and that zoning amendment bylaw number 1243/2026 be given second reading, and that zoning amendment bylaw number 1243 be given third reading. And then if you accepted that, then they will be required to do the development permits prior to giving it adopted, or fourth reading and adoption, which is fine.
Move first reading, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Fascio. Yeah, let's take these in sequence and in order. Motion from Councillor Fascio to give this first reading. A seconder to that, Councillor Jackson. Thank you. It has first reading. Could I have a motion for second reading? Oh, we have to vote on that? Sorry, I jumped ahead. Thank you. All in favor of first reading?
Thank you. Second reading, could I have Councillor Vital moves second reading, seconded by Councillor Jackson. Discussion on second reading. Councillor Pacho.
Thank you, Worship, through you to Mr. Cossie. Just a couple of questions. Would this require the floodplain adjustments on the building?
I'm sorry, Your Worship,
Would
can you-
this require the floodplain height for the building being a living space?
if it's on the level ground, yes, but I suspect it's going to be above the garage.
Oh, okay. The way I'm reading it, it sounds like it's just a one.
It could be, but we haven't seen the building permit application yet. And if it is in the building permit application or done through that process, then part of the review is that they have to meet the flood construction level requirement of 14.55 meters.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the clarification, Mr. Cossie. Good question, Councillor Faccio. Mr. Cossie, can you explain about parking requirements for the second building? Is it on-street parking or is there parking on the lot?
It will be parking on the lot, Your Worship, and there's ample room there for it now.
Can you, off the top of your head, know what the number of parking stalls is that's required by our bylaws?
One.
Thank you. It is a large, irregular shaped lot. And if there is parking, that will reduce conflict with neighbors and street parking. Any other discussion on second reading? Councillor Vital.
Thank you, Mayor Talon, through you to Mr. Cossie. So we could implement sort of like a limit on the size of the coach house, but what you seem to indicate that it would be on top of an existing garage. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Worship, it could be on top of an existing garage. When we know when the building permit application comes through, we'll know in a better situation. At this particular point in time, it's I forget the section number, but in there, we're allowed to have 90 square meters for the coach house. And that's in the zoning bylaw.
Right, thank you. Mayor Talon, I'm not comfortable going to third reading this evening. I do like Mr. Cossie's comments on having the applicant do a riparian assessment. I believe we can do that at second reading before we move to third reading. Is that right, CAO?
CAO.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. It could be held at second if you wish. But I do believe there's no risk because you could take it to third reading, and if you want to rescind it, you want to move it back to second. If there's a required amendment, you could do it at that time. Now, there are a couple of permits that need to be met. Before that, it would go to final adoption, so it's up to council. You can hold it at second or you can move it to third.
For clarification, CAO, if it's held at second this evening, would that allow the developer to provide some more information and probably answer some of the questions council has?
Yes, Your Worship. They could definitely come forward with more information. However, it will take 2 more meetings in order for it to be finally adopted because the next one it will get third reading and then final adoption after that.
Thank you. Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Worship. I drive by this property all the time. I don't see a problem with what the developers ask you to do. I don't see any other building there. It's all the same houses. They're all pretty high in the floodplain. I think the way it is, the third reading should be given. Otherwise, we're just going to delay it and delay it and delay it. I don't see any reason. Just take a drive around on Naismith and you'll see it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Any other discussion on motion of second reading? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor of second reading of the motion, and that carries.
There is a recommendation for third reading. Is there a mover for third reading this evening? Moved by Councillor Vital, seconded by Councillor Jackson. Discussion on third reading. Councillor Vital.
Thank you, Mayor Tallon. Given our CAO's comment on second reading, I did vote in favor of passing second reading. However, I'm not in favor of giving it third reading until we get a little bit more information, which I believe our CAO and probably Mr. Cossey would be able to provide. So I will be voting to not in favor of third reading. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vital. With the CAO's explanation, if we get something and knowing we can repeal third reading or rescind it, whatever the right word is, I'm comfortable with it receiving third reading tonight. Any other discussion on the motion? I see none. I'll call the vote on third reading. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Vital opposed. The motion carries. Item 17 on our agenda, new business. I don't believe there is any new business tonight, and takes us to item 18, notices of motion, and there's 3. There's one from myself. It came about from a correspondence from a resident who wanted to acknowledge someone, and in discussions with staff, realized that we don't have a set out process for acknowledging people in the village. So it's regarding civic recognition, and I'll just read it out. Whereas the village does not currently have any established policies for recognizing and awarding members of the public for their contributions to the community, and whereas establishing such a policy would provide for a clear and consistent awarding process, therefore be it resolved that staff be directed to draft a civic recognition policy that outlines eligibility criteria, nominating process, selection method, and process by which public spaces may be named after an individual for council's consideration. And there's 2 more from Councillor Schweinbenz. I look to CAO Cook to read those into the record.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I would like to start by thanking you for your short notice of motion compared to this one here. Okay, so whereas, this notice of motion from Councillor Schweinbenz, Community Forest Engagement. Whereas the village of Harrison Hot Springs is situated within a low-lying valley surrounded by deep terrain and predominantly sectoral forests, many of which are historically managed for timber production using practices such as monoculture, species selection, suppression of deciduous vegetation through mechanical and chemical means, and subsequent clear-cut harvesting, and whereas the geographic setting of the village make it vulnerable to a range of natural hazards, including flooding from the Miami River, landslides and debris flows from surrounding slopes, wildfire risk with the wildland-urban interface, situation of the salmon-bearing streams, and reduced air quality due to limited atmospheric circulation within the valley. And whereas a growing body of British Columbia-based research highlights potential cumulative impacts associated with large-scale clear cutting, including altered local microclimates, increasing surface runoff and sediment transport, changes in slope, stability, impacts to ecosystems and wildlife habitat, potential effects on archaeological and cultural values, and reduced opportunities for low-impact recreational use in areas adjacent to communities. And whereas climate change is contributing to more frequent and intense precipitation and heat events, increasing pressures on infrastructure, emergency management capacity, public finances, and overall safety and well-being of residents. And whereas the village of Harrison Hot Springs recognized the importance of the forestry sector to local and regional employment and to the provincial economy, and further recognizes that evolving ecosystem-based forest management approaches can support both long-term economic viability and broader social, cultural, and environmental values. Therefore, it be resolved that council directs staff to engage the relevant provincial agencies, departments, BC Timber Sales, Chilliwack Forest District, Indigenous governments, and neighboring communities to share the following perspectives as a case for dialogue and collaborative planning. Council's significant concern regarding the continuation of large-scale clear-cut harvesting on slopes and forested areas surrounding the community, including Mount Woodside, Mount Agassiz, Green Mountain, Bear Mountain, Mount Slocum, given their proximity to residential areas and critical watersheds, and Council's strong interest in exploring the support of lower impact selective harvesting and other ecosystem-based forest management practices that recognize forest values beyond timber supply while maintaining long-term economic returns for sustainably managed forests, and council support for community-based forest stewardship principles, including meaningful opportunities for residents of Harrison Hot Springs and surrounding communities to provide input into forest management decisions and policies affecting the local landscape, and council's interest in working collaboratively with the provincial partners to reconsider the routine mechanical and chemical suppression of native deciduous species within the Harrison Lake watershed and surrounding areas in order to encourage forest conditions that may enhance wildfire resistance, slope stability, biodiversity, and climate resilience. And the last one from Councillor Swinebens is public art policy. Whereas the Village of Harrison Hot Springs has an established and evolving history of public art and a community that values creative expression, and whereas public art continues contributes to the cultural character and shared spaces of the village and may offer benefits both residents and visitors, and whereas it is in interest with the artistic community regarding potential opportunities related to public art, therefore it be resolved that that council directs staff to undertake a review of the public art policy and provide observations and considerations related to its alignment with community and artistic interests, and further be it resolved that staff explore and report on possible approaches for the consideration of a public art opportunities, including the potential role of an advisory panel.
Thank you, CEO Cook. We're going to have some interesting council meetings. Item 19 on the agenda is question periods where items relevant to the agenda. Is there anyone in the gallery this evening that has a question for council? Good evening, Mr. Allen. You don't need to state your address. I think we dropped that from the procedures bylaw. Welcome this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. John Allen, Harrison Hot Springs, no address. I was quite interested in the ACC discussion and the report. One of the things that attracts people to Harrison, either as residents or as tourists and visitors, is the green space, the trees, the open space, the trails, all of that outdoor thing. And you will see the advertising from the Tourism Harrison River Valley organization emphasizing the natural attributes of the village, because people coming out of the city, which is our primary market, want to get away from the gray concrete and into the woods and the trails. The ACC report that's been presented does in fact deal with that issue, but the reality is that in the last 40 years, since we acquired Firehall Park, Woods Park, the Miami Greenway Trail, and the 73 acres on Macomb Drive, the village has not acquired any parkland. we've had a population growth, and we have failed miserably to add to the green space that is necessary for a balanced community. This report is particularly galling because it does in fact say that we should now charge developers and people coming into the community an amount of money to contribute to the acquisition of farmland, or sorry, of parkland. But the report does so on page 64 in the agenda, under Parks, Recreation and Trails, and again on another page on the report. And it calls for the acquisition of parkland in the oversupplied north part of the village of Harrison Hot Springs. Council input on ACC says Parks, Recreation and Trails, land acquisition for park in the north end. And over here, land acquisition for parks in the north end. So why would you continue with this recommendation to ignore the fact that South Harrison, Angus Estates, where you yourself live, Mr. Mayor, and the affordable housing area, as it was supposed to be, is bereft of public play space for the kids? You drive through there, the kids are playing in the street, they're crossing Macomb Drive to go to the woods, and there's nothing in South Harrison in the way of parkland. So I would say that I would completely reject this report because it fails completely to address the lack of public park, play space, or green space anywhere south of probably Chestnut Avenue or maybe Pine Street. Even the development of Pine Avenue and all of that high density,
Thank you,
no
Mr.
parkland, no parkland. And again,
Thank you,
you're
Mr.
putting the
Allen.
money into North Harrison and ignoring the south part of the village.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. I think I got the gist of your question, which is why this preliminary, this background report doesn't emphasize parkland, in particular, in the southern part of the village. As we discussed and decided earlier, we're taking this report and we will be discussing it further in a committee of the whole meeting. Thank you for your questions. I do live in the south part of the village. Also happen to be a very easy walking distance from the start of the Spirit Trails and the east sector, which are absolutely lovely. But you're quite correct. There's no playground or park area in the south part of the village. Thank you for your question, and it's one that will no doubt be discussed at a future committee of the whole meeting. Is there anyone else with a question in the room tonight? Potentially anyone online, watching online with a question?
Anyone on Zoom, if you have a question, please raise your hand. There are no questions, Your Worship.
Seeing no questions online, item 20 is adjournment, moved by Councillor Fascio, seconded by Councillor Jackson. All in favor, and we are adjourned. Thank you all this evening.